Okay, we have started.
All right, everyone, we're just going to start in roughly 2 or so minutes just to allow more people to come in. And in the meantime, please take a look at our agenda for the day, and then we'll be going over some house rules in a little bit. All right, just one more minute and we can begin this webinar. All right, so we'll get started because we do have a couple of topics to go over. Hello, welcome to Teaching Tuesdays, where we go over brief credential topics for the month of May. I'll be your host, Stephanie Magdaleno, and I'm from the San Joaquin County Office of Education. On the call, I have my co-host here, Craig Allen, and he's also from the San Joaquin County Office of Education. I have Nitza Ortiz from Ventura County, Andy Thomas from Tuolumne, Marcia Ramirez from Stanislaus, and Jenny Pong from San Luis Obispo. We'll be going over these credential topics and taking mini breaks in between if time allows it. Please type in any questions in the Q&A as the chat has been disabled. Due to time constraints, if you can also refrain yourself from raising the hand and just include that in the Q&A. This meeting and all sessions are being recorded and the links will be sent out within a month. The link with the presentations, including from the previous sessions, will be sent out periodically. Always check with your monitoring authority regarding the requirements, and CTC has purview over granting and denying all applications submitted for review. And with that, we will get started with Nitza's presentation.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Share the screen.
So yeah, so this is this schedule. So you can get today, tomorrow, Friday screen. So we don't.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen okay?
So
yeah. All right. So good morning, everybody. My name is Nitza Ortiz, and I am the Credentials Manager at Ventura County Office of Education. And today we're going to go over the review of the 4.3 and 4.5 CalPADS reports. One thing that I do want to say is there's a lot of information on the 4.3 and the 4.5 reports. We're only going over specific areas that cause the most problems with with the certificated audit. But you always want to make sure that you talk to your monitoring authority. Okay, so things that we might be going over in here might be a little bit different than how your monitoring authority handles certain areas. And so you definitely always want to have that open communication with them. And then another thing that I want to say is there's a lot of information. Typically, this kind of training will take a couple of hours at a minimum too. So I'm trying to put it all together. So I'll throw a lot of information at you. This, as Stephanie said, it is being recorded, and so you'll be back, you'll have a chance to review it at a later date. So what are the 4.3 and the 4.5 CalPADS reports? Well, the 4.3 CalPADS report reflects the teaching assignments being taught at your district, and the teachers teaching the assignments. The 4.5 CalPADS report reflects the non-teaching certificated assignments and the educators assigned to these settings. Why are they important? Well, they are important because the information that is included in this report directly impacts your state annual audit, right? That is run through CalSAAS. So what happens is all of the information that is reported on this that is included in these reports goes over to CDE. CDE then forwards the information over to CTC, who inputs that data into the CalSAAS system. All of the teaching assignments and the course attributes goes into CalSAAS. CTC also inputs into CalSAAS teacher credentialing information. Then the system compares assignments with the credentials information based on the teacher's SCID numbers. And if something matches, say, for example, you have an English course being taught by someone with an English credential, then the system automatically clears the assignment. But if there's any kind of mismatch, then the system creates an exception. And a list of exceptions is what ends up becoming your district's audits. These exceptions will require manual interaction and you have to clear them. Work with your monitoring assignment, I should say. So we'll start with the easy one, the 4.5 report, which is the non-classroom based or support assignments. So these are your non-teaching certificated assignments, and they include any of your admin positions, your service positions, and your support assignments. Okay, and so here you'll see a link, and it's available to you to review at a later date or a later time. And I kind of want to go over it with you quickly. Are you guys able to see this? Yes, okay. So it looks a little bare, right? Because we've removed any identifying information here from the left side of this report. But a lot of the information that we're going to be looking at right now it's all on the right side, obviously. When you work in human resources, you have an idea of the structure of your sites, okay? So you know that you have a principal, you know that you have maybe your middle schools and your high schools have an assistant principal. Sometimes those are split. Sometimes you have a full counselor at the site. Sometimes you have, a split counselor, or you have an idea of how your sites work. And so when you're reviewing the information in here, you want to make sure that if you know you have a psychologist at the site, you want to make sure that they appear on this report. If you know you have, if you have a principal that was in the position on census date, then they should appear on the report. So these are kind of like the beginning red flags, like where you start looking at, oh, okay, that person is missing. Why is that person missing? The other important part on this report is the job classification. So if you notice here in column K, you'll see that there's an 11, a 10, a 12. So we'll start with the 10, administrator. The 10 is the 10, it's a code that is used for administrators. Anybody in a position that is considered administrator. This includes your principals, your assistant principals, your directors, your, all of those positions that are admin in nature. Now, the system will look for an admin credential for these positions. So if you have a position such as a coordinator at one site that is not admin in nature, then you want to make sure that you are not reporting them with a 10, or you'll end up with an exception. Number 11 is for service assignments, pupil services. That includes your counselors, your psychologists, your SOPs, again, just service positions, right? We'll come back to 12 real quickly. 27 is itinerant or pull-out push-in teachers, okay? And then 12 is teachers. Now, 12s would automatically cause me to stop and review. Why do I have a 12 on the non-classroom report, right? Should it really be, should this person really be reported on the non-classroom as a teacher, or should they appear on the 4.3, which is the teaching assignment? And again, we're only just reviewing, right? So just because you see something that causes alarm or a red flag doesn't mean that it's automatically wrong. You're just trying to eliminate any inaccurate reporting. So that would be the first thing that you look at, job classification. The other thing is your contracted staff providing services to your students. So, for example, as I look at this report, this is a fairly small school district, and I see that they have, principals at their site, psychologists, a couple counselors. I don't see that they're reporting a school librarian. And I know that every district by law must have a school librarian. Well, I happen to know that this district is contracting with the county for a school librarian, but they're not reporting them through the CalPADS report. That's wrong, okay? If you contract out for services, including your school librarian, if you contract out for SLPs, for deaf and hard of hearing teachers, visual impairment teachers, school psychologists, school nurses, whatever it is, you must report them, whether or not they are employed by your district. So the question you want to ask yourself is this certificated employee providing services to my students? And if the question is yes, then they need to be reported. It does not matter who pays them. Okay, so that's kind of a change from how we used to do things prior to CalSAAS, but it's an important change because we want to make sure that we are telling the state all of the services that we have for our students. Okay, so if, for example, you have 100 students with specific language impairment disability, and then you only report one SLP because you only employ one SLP, then what you're telling the state is you have one SLP providing services to 100 students. And so you want to make sure that you're reporting your contracted employees. Okay, so that's really important. The next thing to consider here is, are you reporting everybody at the site where they're servicing? Okay, so specifically at the district office, I review to see if there's any service providers. And I see a counselor here. And I think, okay, that cannot possibly be true because there are no students at the DO, right? Where is this person providing services? That's where you want to report them. Now, there are many times where your service providers are split between different sites. So this counselor might possibly be between two different elementary schools or maybe two different junior highs. And so you want to make sure that you are reporting them at both sites with the appropriate FTE. Again, we're telling a story about the services that we're providing to our students. Okay, so you want to make sure that if you have a counselor half of the time at two sites, then you report it as such, because otherwise you're telling the state, well, I have a counselor at the district office. That really doesn't say anything. That really doesn't tell the state what kind of services you're providing to your students at this junior high, for example. And so it's important that you report them at the sites that they service. Another thing that I don't see on this report is teachers on leave of absence. Teachers that were on a leave of absence during census date. It is important that you report your teachers on leave of absence. So they are reported with, this is one of those scenarios in which you would see a 12, but then the classification here would be 6028, I'm sorry, 6018, which is teacher leave of absence, okay? So, and again, that's a shift, right? We are shifting from moving from how we do our reporting, but we want to make sure that your teachers on leave of absence are being reported. And those are the ones that you should see, the only 12s that you should see on this report. One thing that catches my attention in this report is I see a day-to-day sub. We should not be reporting day-to-day subs. The only exception to this is if you have a substitute teacher that is providing instruction on census date in a vacancy, that is the only time where you report the day-to-day sub. Okay, so again, if the substitute teacher is providing instruction in a position where the teacher is on leave, you report the teacher on leave. That is the teacher of record. And the audit looks at the teacher of record's credentials. Okay, so that is the only so we don't want to report the substitute teaching. Substitute teachers only get reported if they are serving in a vacancy on census date. In the past, we used to use this 60/20 code, the other certificated non-instructional assignment, for a bunch of things. We don't do that anymore. We're trying to get away from using the 60/20 because it really doesn't tell the state anything. It doesn't tell the story of what this person is doing. And so those will always become exceptions that somebody will have to manually clear later. We want to be using, for example, the 60/28 for teacher and special assignment, CalSAAS, or the the case manager. We have a code for that. So CDE has created additional code so that we can kind of get away from the 60/20 report, the 60/20 reporting. In the past, we used to use that quite a bit for reporting like adult education or early childhood. It's important to note that through CalPADS, we do not report early childhood programs, general ed or special ed, and we definitely don't report adult education. Your monitoring authority will still do an audit, but it will be a manual audit. The system does not yet have the capability of doing the audit for these kind of scenarios through CalSAAS. And I think that's basically it for this report. I want to mention that I did provide these questions to ask yourself in the next slide, in this slide, so that you're able to go back at a later time. Again, there's just so much information with this report. It's kind of hard to put it in 40 minutes, but you'll see here at the bottom a link that tells you what credentials are needed for each of the positions reported on the 4.5 report. So we'll move over to the most fun, and that is the 4.3 report, your teaching assignments. The 4.3 report includes all teaching assignments, including general education. Oh, let me back up. All teaching assignments in grades TK through 12. These include general education assignments, special education assignments, career technical education assignments, CTE, and student support assignments. The links here at the bottom take you to a report similar to the one that we just seen. It's a much bigger report, so if you want to review it at a later date or later time, is there for you along with the review notes. But for right now, we'll stick to the next slides. The first thing that I'd like you to think about is verifying the years of service. This is what the CalPADS, the 4.3 CalPADS report looks like. Verify the years of service, specifically paying close attention to anyone that has less than 3 years of service. Why do I say less than 3 years of service? Well, because anybody with less than 3 years of service will show up on the CDE's Teacher Assignment Monitoring Outcome Report as an ineffective teacher, right? And if that is the case, if they have less than 3 years, then that's okay. That's accurate, right? We want to make sure that we are verifying the accuracy of the information. But it so often happens that you hire a person, they come in, you want to get them into the system as soon as possible because you want to get them in payroll, you want to get them in their assignment as soon as possible. And then later you get a verification of experience and they have 20 years, right, of service. And then you forget to update or somebody forgets to update the years of service, and now they show up as ineffective on your later reports. And so you want to make sure that you go back and you review if it's a first-time teacher. they're just, entering induction, that kind of thing, okay, they're brand new teachers. But if they're not, then you want to make sure that you are entering the total years of service for them. The next column that you should pay attention to is the state course codes. And there's specific codes that you should really pay attention to. I'm not saying don't pay attention to anything else, right? But these are the ones that cause sort of like the most exceptions, the most misassignments. And the first one is the 9104, which is the English language development. So there is this thought out there that for English language development, the credential that is needed is the English credential. And that is not the case. English language development is different from English as a language, right? In English language development, the student is taught the basic structures, forms, and functions of the English language. And so you do not need an English credential to teach that class, but instead you do need a full EL authorization, such as the CLAT certificate, the ELA 1 authorization embedded in the credential, the bilingual authorization, the single subject, the world languages ELD credential. Okay, this class is a standalone ELD course, and it's more of a service to EL students than it is like a content area, okay? And if you notice here on this one, I do want to point out the education service, and we'll discuss that in the next slide. But I want to point out that for English language development, the choice here, which is the designated ELD, the number 2 choice. We'll talk about it in a second, but I wanted to point that out. Now, the other courses that you want to look at are the CTE courses, and these are the codes here that fall under 7,000. The range of 7,000 to 8,999. And the reason why you want to be looking at these is because these courses require a CTE credential, either a CTE credential or one of the 4 single subject credentials that cover CTE courses, such as agriculture, business, home ec, and ITE. We found that many times teachers with a single subject credential, just say in science or math, are assigned to these CTE courses, and that's a misassignment. Okay, so you want to make sure that you are reviewing the credentialing for these CTE courses. And if and when you find someone with the general education credential in these courses, you want to ask yourself, are these CTE courses part of an alternative education setting, such as independent study or continuation school? Then you have a little bit more flexibility because alternative education is covered by Ed Code 44865, which calls for a full credential based on BA and student teaching. But so you have a little bit more flexibility for CTE courses in an alternative education setting. The other courses that you should really pay close attention to are electives, or what we think are electives. And the reason why we should pay close attention to those is because those are the ones that cause the most misassignments. Misassignments, not exceptions, sure, but true misassignments throughout the state, okay? For example, yearbook 9224. They're electives in that the students get to choose whether they want to take the class or not, right? So in that sense, they're electives. But for credentialing purposes, it's not considered an elective course because yearbook falls under English and or art. And so again, oftentimes people might think principals or whoever is doing the master schedule, oh yeah, it's an elective, anybody can teach it, any full credential can teach it, and that's just not the case. So you want to make sure that you are reviewing your yearbook assignments. The other one that causes a lot of misassignments are STEM courses, those ones reported with the 9222. And so you want to make sure that you are reviewing the 9222s and the subcategories, and that you're reviewing the credentials for them. A lot of these STEM courses fall under science, math, some fall under business or ITE. But again, because they are electives to students, there's this idea that well, any full credential teacher can teach these courses, and that's not the case. You must look at the primary content of the course, which is what the subcategory here tells you, and then review credential requirements. And then the last courses, these are true electives. AVID, which is the 9211, 9216 is like student assistant, 9218 skills center, student government or ASB, life skills, peer counseling. These are the true electives. They don't, the primary content of these classes don't fall within one single subject area. And so they are what we call true electives. And true electives are covered by Title V, 80005B. And this Title V says that anybody that has a full credential based on bachelor's degree in student teaching can teach true electives. Well, guess what? Teachers who are working on an intern credential, PIP, STIP, waiver, or CTE credential holders cannot be assigned to these electives because they don't have yet the student teaching portion of the requirement. And so we see a lot of misassignments in this area. And so you want to make sure that you're kind of keeping a close eye at those true electives. Education service, so that has to do with EL services. As you see here, there's total of 6 options, and we'll briefly cover them. Number 1 is to be used if you have a dual immersion program, a course in which the instruction is being provided in a language other than English. And if you choose the option 1, that is the only time where you also have to then complete the following column, which is what is the instructional language. That column is only required if you choose option 1. If you choose any of the other options, then the system knows that the default language is English. Okay, but if you're using one, then they want to know what is the language and what is the reason for that. Well, when you go to CalSAAS, CalSAAS will be looking for bilingual authorization in that specific language. So number 2 is ELD instruction only. As I mentioned in the last slide, the 9104, the ELD course, for the most part, there's, this option would apply to that course, ELD instruction only. These statements that I'm making are kind of like general. You still want to make sure that your EL coordinator is involved in the whole process, but these are just things that as you're reviewing these reports, kind of keep in mind. Okay, what looks right, what doesn't look right. Integrated ELD instruction only, we mostly see in departmentalized courses like junior high or high school, where the teacher is teaching their content area, right? Math, science, social science, but they're utilizing EL techniques so that their EL students are able to grasp the content area. Designated and integrated ELD instruction, which is option number 4, we mostly see in elementary settings, where the students have 20-30 minutes of protected ELD time during the day, and then the rest of the time they utilize integrated techniques. And so we mostly see that at the elementary sites, or self-contained settings, I should say. Option 5, no English learner services, is utilized in some instances. For example, if you have a high school where the students have the option of going to a community college, taking a course there and earning both high school and college credit, then the professor providing the instruction is a community college professor. They don't have EL authorization, right? So they couldn't possibly be providing EL services. And so that would be appropriate for your dual college courses. And then other services reported, which is number 6, we don't see it as often. Sometimes you'll see it for special education students who have other needs, or also 504 students whose needs are being met through other means. One thing to keep in mind here is the very last column of the 4.3 report right here. That'll tell you whether there's EL enrollment or not. So If you have a yes here, and then you have something like this, which is a blank, somebody just didn't enter it, that's a problem, right? Because or that's potentially a problem, and you should definitely run the scenario through your EL coordinator, because the students by law uh, are they have to get the service, right? And so you want to make sure, is there really no EL services being provided at this course? If the answer is truly no, then you want to make sure that you select 5. I would say don't leave it blank. Be consistent in the entries. It's better to just say no EL services rather than just leaving it blank. But again, if you have yes enrollment, you probably want to have some service. Now, it's not, you might have Title I funding audit, Title I audit findings, or if you don't, if you're not reporting services. One of the really important areas, instructional strategies. So there are 2 options for structural strategies, 300 for home hospital and 700 for special education. You want to be reporting your assignments correctly. Home hospital, credentialing changes. Credentialing rules changes for home hospital. It is considered an alternative education setting. And so maybe a teacher with a single subject credential has, or multiple subject credential has a lot more flexibility, right? And so you want to make sure that you're reporting those assignments correctly. The 700, the special education instructional strategy, is one that has been missed often, less and less each year with CalSAAS, right? We're in year, I don't know, 4 or 5 of CalSAAS, and so we're missing it less. But it's important that we select it for the courses. So CalSAAS, the way that it works is it looks at what is the content of the course, right? And then it looks at the credential. So if it's English, then it's going to look for a credential. Now for special education credentials authorize the holders to teach any subject so long as the population is special education students, right? And so if you tell it that it's special education with instructional strategy of 700, then the system bypasses the content area and instead reviews the student disability, okay? So it reviews the primary disability of all the students that are in the roster of that specific teacher, and it compares it with the credential, okay? So now, if you forget to select the 700 code, what the system does, it doesn't know, right? So it's going to say, oh, what authorizes this special education teacher to teach English? And now the system bypassed the second part of the audit, which is verifying the disabilities. And so now you have to do that manual check. You and your monitoring authorities need to do that manual check. And it's a lot of work. It's not fun. Make sure that you are reporting your special education settings. Now, I pulled up this report here, or this example, because this is the assignment for one teacher. And notice how 2 of the courses for one teacher are special education and the rest are not. So I said, that doesn't make sense. I mean, either this teacher has an English credential and then a SPED credential, or this is wrong. Well, this is a SPED teacher and they just missed the 700 instructional strategy. Resource support teachers, your RSP teachers. In the past, we used to report them as either with that 6020 code, or we used to report them as co-teachers with the general education teacher. Resource teachers are now co-teachers. They are in the classroom to provide the support to the special education students who are streamlined into the general ed setting. So they're either providing push-in services or pull-out services. They're not to be reported as co-teachers, or you'll have an exception. Instead, to report these teachers, you would report the state course code 9231 with the instructional strategy of special education. Now, it's important to mention that this is a support assignment and it does not require student roster to be attached. The support assignments that do not require student roster to be attached is the 9103, which is English support, 9230, which are your RTI or MTSS courses, 9231, which is your RSP teachers, and 9245, which is your foundational math support, and 9246, which is your higher math support. So those are the only courses, teaching assignments that don't require student roster. It's important that you report your K6 departmentalized settings. Okay, so that includes if you have a PE teacher, a single subject PE teacher at the elementary site that pulls the students from their self-contained and provides only PE instruction, for example, that's a departmentalized setting, and the teacher requires that you the teacher assignment must be reported on the 4.3 report. These also include, and we're going to see more and more, music, art, and dance due to the Prop 28 funds. We're going to see a lot of departmentalized music, art, and dance at the elementary settings. It does require student roster, right? So you're going to have to manually put in the students in your SIS system. But if you don't report them, then you're not telling the state the awesome services that you're providing to your students, right? And they're just not going to know, and then you're not reporting all the certificated assignments. So that's a problem. You also definitely want to report your adaptive PE teachers. And again, it doesn't matter if you contract out or if they're your employees. You want to make sure that they are reported. You want to make sure that the services for the students that require adaptive PE, are included here. And then the last couple things that are important: middle school settings, right? Middle school core settings, I'm sorry. If that is when a multiple subject teacher is teaching 2 or more subjects to one group of students. So in this case here, in the first case, a teacher is teaching English history to one group of students, English history to a second group of students. That's a perfect core setting. And all of the courses must be reported with the Y. Yes, this is part of the core setting. Now you also want to report, yes, if you have a hanging period, hanging off of the core. What you don't want to report as a yes is if, like, say, my first teacher here who's teaching English social science, and then the 5th period they teach something like AVID, right, which is a true elective. That's not part of the course setting, so that would not be reported with the yes. That would be a no. It's not part of the course setting. The next thing is the independent study setting. The credentialing rules are more flexible with independent study settings because, again, it's part of an alternative education. It's part of alternative education, which is covered by Ed Code 44865. It requires a full credential based on BA in student teaching. So when a teacher is an independent study teacher, you'll see a bunch of different subjects that they're teaching: English, social science, history, math, science, all of them, because they truly are teaching a teacher of record for all these subjects. And so, but you want to make sure that you're reporting it correctly. Otherwise, you're going to have exceptions. Well, what authorizes this teacher to teach all these subjects when they have a PE credential, for example? And, sorry. Where am I going? Apologize for that. And then the last one here is local assignment options. If you have settings that are covered by local assignment options are board approved, like, say, for example, you have someone who's teaching because they have a certain amount of units and they get board approved, and that's a local assignment option, and you want to report those settings through your CalPADS. So when the information goes over to CalSAAS, the system will know, oh, this setting, okay, so this teacher who has an English credential is teaching math, that's a mismatch. But then the system tells the system, the local assignment option column tells the system, oh, this is covered by a local assignment option. So these are what we consider, or what we call, predetermined exceptions. They bypass the district. The district already told CalSAAS how it is that the course is covered. And so these exceptions go directly to the county or the monitoring authority to verify that they in fact have like the board approval, that things happen to make sure that the local assignment option is approved appropriately. This is a sample of the college credit course that I gave earlier, where somebody, one of your high school students goes over to the community college to receive instruction by a professor. Notice the seat of all nines instead of a teacher name. This is probably one of the only examples where you should be using the seat of all nines. And again, no EL services, right? All of the college credit courses have specific state course codes. And so you want to make sure that you're using like the 90/20 college English, right? Instead of just an English course. And you want to make sure that the local assignment option is also selected. The ed code covering this college credit courses is the 76004. And so you want to make sure that that's selected. We talked about this a little bit earlier, dual immersion programs. If the instruction of any one course is being provided in a language other than English, and you want to select option 1, and then you want to say what is the language in which the instruction is provided. Okay, this is how we report to the state that we have dual immersion programs. This is the information, all of the information that we just went over. Again, I added it here to the slide so that if at a later time you want to go take a look at it, review the information again, compare it with that report that is available to you, you're welcome to, and questions to ask yourself, okay? The 700 everything that we just went over. And that's it for me. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar. I'm so sorry that the information is just so dry and there's so much of it coming at you so quickly. Not a fun webinar, but I hope it's useful to you.
Nitsa, you did great. A couple of people have said it as well. We will just take like a little 4-minute break and we'll be back at 9:45 to continue with Andy Thomas. All right, so just a little break for everybody, just for a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Steph.
All right, everyone, we are going to begin with Andy Thomas, and she's going to be discussing navigating CalSAAS.
Hey guys. All right, so I will go quickly so that we can stay on time here. I'm going to be going over navigating CalSAAS. I'm from the Tuolumne County Superintendents of Schools. Here's our agenda for my presentation. We're going to go over the homepage, user types, exception overview, reports, extra reporting, and where to go for help. Keep in mind, this is a very dry subject, so I will try to insert as much humor as I can, but I am very sorry for just kind of showing you the basics of CalSAAS, and the other people will go into more detail about like exceptions, and Nisa did a great job about trying to get a hold of your exceptions before they actually reach CalSAAS. All right, so I'm gonna hit you with some knowledge right now, okay? So we're gonna go over the homepage. Homepage is, once you log on to CalSAAS, you have your homepage, and it's basically a quick overview of your exceptions. So your districts, your county, whatever you are, you're going to see all your exceptions. Now, keep in mind, no one should say 0, but I didn't want to like make anyone feel bad for how many determinations I actually have, because my county is this big compared to like huge counties. I know San Diego sometimes, I think, what did I hear? Like 6,000, 7,000 determinations. So I didn't want to make them feel bad with only my 300. So anyway, so I just put 0. So you can see you're not determined, you're determined. As you're logging on, when CalSAAS is happening, you can see your districts actually working, because your determinations will go up and your non-determinations will go down, and your total. You can see how many have been assigned for appropriate assignment, core assignment, local assignment options, short-term waivers, and how many you've actually reported as a misassignment, or someone else has reported as a misassignment, or even your TPSLs. Then, if you don't want to see all of that information, you can filter out your view by using the filters. And I put it on the left side, or I'm sorry, the right side of the screen, but it's actually on the left side of the screen. But you can filter out your options for that. All right, we're going to go into users. There is a user hierarchy. I'm glad I said that word right, because I am horrible at pronouncing words. You have your county users who assist in assigning those people. Your county admin is going to be the one that actually sets up all your counties, your districts. Sorry about that. And then your district will be there to set up all your district users. The county sees everything, the county admin, the county user, and you can see your different districts. The only thing that you can't see, or is a little tricky to see, are your charter schools if they're authorized by a district. So, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So here's the hierarchy. Like I said, the county is at the top. CTC is at the very, very top. They control everything. Then you have your county authorized charter user, which is kind of on the same level as your county user. You have your districts, and then you have your district authorized charter user as well, which again, you can kind of see it's at the same level as the county, but they only see their district. Their county. So workload versus scope. Your workload, you can actually see. So let's just say you are a district user and you are assigned maybe 2 or 3 schools. You can actually see all of your schools within your district. If your district has 10 schools, you're going to be able to see all of the exceptions for that district. Doesn't mean you can work on them, but you can see them. And that's because CTC wants the district to actually collaborate and see how people are using their district exceptions and getting those cleared up and comparing those. So again, you'll be able to see all of them, but you won't be able to work on them. Multiple roles, this is what I was talking about. I actually have a multiple role because I'm at the county schools office. We don't have any charters under our county school, but we do have charters at the county. So I am not only a county user, but I am also a district admin user so that I can see that charter that is in that other district. So when I log in, I actually have to select the different user types that I want to that I want to be in. So if I want to look at that charter, then I have to log into that district admin account. All right, so if you want to add a user, if you're at the county level, if you're at a district admin level, this is how you're going to add a user. First, you'll click on admin. It'll take you to the, and I know you can't see my hand. I like to talk with my hands a lot. I'm sorry. So you'll see the system administration and you'll click on manage users, and then you'll click add user. And then you basically follow the prompts. The next prompt is you have to put in an email address. And if that email address is already within the system, it'll say, hey, you already have a user. If it's not, it says, okay, let's add this user. Once they're added, they get an email with their, basically a link to log in and set up their password and everything. If you need to, you can reset that password. But other than that, it's basically on their own as far as accessing and everything. All right, so we are going to go into exception overview. We're moving quickly here. Exception definition, it can be one of three things, and Nisa kind of covered a lot of this, so she did my job. Excellent, thank you, Nisa. Just kidding. She did do my job for me, but for what I was presenting more in detail than what I'm going to go into. So the different things that the exceptions can be, it can be a result of comparing those course codes to what the teacher is actually holding as far as a credential. And that will result in a CALPADS course code error. The educators, if they don't hold the appropriate credential authorization, they're going to get an exception for that. And then any assignments that are vacant or that have a substitute noted as the teacher of record will come up as an exception as well. The three types of exceptions, there's CALPADS codes. We went over this one. So, and Nisa went over this in extreme detail, and I love it. I took a lot of notes. I plan on just stealing that presentation and giving it to my districts. So what a CALPADS code error is, or I'm sorry, exception, is the exception is based solely on the educator, what credential they have and what course they're assigned to. So I've had a lot of these where it's kind of a mistake on the district where I'm trying to think of the exact code that they used, but they used a code, let's just say for a math class, but it was actually an English class. So the teacher held an English, a single subject English, and she was teaching English, but it was just reported wrong. So that would be a CALPADS code exception, because it would come up and say, hey, this person doesn't have the right credential for that. Then you have your special education exception. So special education is a little bit weird at the moment. The way that they're reporting it to CALPADS is by their disability. So when a student has a disability of autism, deaf blindness, deaf hearing impairment, emotional disturbance, established medical disability, hard of hearing, intellectual, all the different ones that they have on there, they are matching it up to, so in CALPADS, you report those disabilities using your CALSAAS or whatever IEP management system you have through the CALPADS reports. So you have that disability, then it matches it up when it goes through the CalSAAS process, and it actually says, does this credential match with this disability? So if you have a mild to moderate, or actually we'll just stick with mild to moderate without an autism authorization, and you're teaching a child with the primary disability, not secondary, primary, because that's the only one that's reported at the moment, it's going to come up as an exception. So you want to be aware of these things. Sometimes there are it's alternative special education placement that you can mark it as. And what that means is if you're teaching a primary disability of hard of hearing and you don't have the credential that actually matches with it, at the moment, my mind is blanking when it comes to the different charts there are of which one can teach what. But let's just say you don't have the right credential for that. Well, if in the IEP team, or the IEP meeting, that team decides that this is the best placement for that student, then that is an alternative special education placement. Usually there are letters that are sent out saying, hey, this person doesn't have the right credential, but this is the best placement for your student based on what the IEP team decided. And the parent is involved in that situation as well. So make sure you're communicating with your SELPA, your special ed people, and that they are designating this as an alternative special education placement if that ever happens. And you want to get that documentation when it comes to your CalSAAS errors. Exceptions, sorry. I call them errors because it makes my districts actually pay attention when I call them errors instead of exceptions. And then the other one is your English learner, and Nisa went into a lot of detail about this one, where if it's, I have a bunch of teachers up here that do not have their EL authorization yet, because they were part of that older group where they got their credential a long time ago and didn't have to have it. And then they didn't do the professional development to add it, or they did and they didn't register it with CTC. And they're teaching a student with an EL, not disability, but with EL on their CALPADS. So they're teaching an English learner. They don't have that either registered with CTC, or they just don't have the EL authorization because they didn't get it. It's going to come up as an exception, and that will be an error that you will have to mark as one of those things. Oh, my mouse has stopped working. There we go. All right. If you don't want to look at all your exceptions at one time, you can filter them out. So you can do your determined, your undetermined. If you are at the county level or even at the district admin level and you're overseeing a bunch of schools, you might want to just go in and see your determined ones and see who is marking what determined and checking those out. You don't want to just have someone put CalPADS errors for everything, because most likely that's not the reason. So just go in there. You can look at all your determined, your undetermined. If they have a determination, you can filter it down to any misassignments, vacancies, corrected misassignment, alternative special ed. It just kind of gives you a better way to see things and narrow it down, especially if you have a lot of exceptions. You can train your point of view to be narrower. I didn't want to keep saying the same word. And that way it's not so overwhelming. Take it one step at a time, look at it, and determine if it's correct. If it's not correct, you'll want to send it back to whoever is completing that exception. All right, so reports. This is my favorite because I love looking at reports. I love data. If you know me, I am a data person, and I love these reports. You can download them and just play with them. I put them in, can't even think of the word right now, pivot tables. There we go. I put them in pivot tables to kind of compare the data just to see, like, is there any weird things going on? Do I have a single subject person teaching a third grader? Because that would be weird. You know, I look for the weird things. So the different reports in CalSAAS, you have your hidden predetermination exception report, you have your detail report, your summary report, your exception history, and you have your superintendent report. You can filter these out, or report scope. Your state report is accessible to all CalSAAS users. Your county report is accessible to county level users only. Your district is accessible to county and district level users, and your school is accessible to the users if that school is actually assigned to them. So remember that workload versus scope. If you have that district level user that is only assigned to those 3 different schools, they're only going to see those 3 different schools in these actual reports. So we're going to talk about the hidden predetermination exception report. These reports can be displayed as an Excel file. So this is the one that I like to go in and look at those. I like to download them and look at them because these are ones that have been either designated in ARIES, Power School, whatever student information system that these schools are using as a predetermination. So this would be your middle school core, any local assignment options. And these are taken right from my predetermined exception. I removed all the school and teacher, all of that identifying information. So you don't get to see any of that. But these are ones that came up on my report, and I only did a couple of them. So you can see there's a general education elective, there's a local assignment option, and it was a teacher preparation student assistant predetermined. So is that correct? I don't know. I'm not at the school, but it's something that I would look at and say, hey, is this really a teacher preparation student assistant class? And what type of credential does this person have? So if they have, one of the things that was that I caught last year was CTE teachers having a student prep session. And technically, according to the CALPADS code, you have to have a clear or preliminary credential in order to teach a teacher prep student assistant class. But with CTE, they can also have a teacher prep student assistant class, but there's no way to code it in the background when it goes through. So it comes up as an exception, and it is right. So it is okay for the CTE person to have a teacher prep student assistant class as long as that class is in the CTE area that they are teaching. So I hope that makes sense. But anyway, you just kind of want to look at it. This report can only be assessed during the monitoring cycle. And you can actually access it for previous years, because you can look at all the previous years that this has been done. The predetermined local assignment options are included in the totals listed in the summary, superintendent detail, exception history reports at the end of the monitoring cycle. Detail report. So this one I really dig into. I download it, I take it and I put it into my Excel. I put in some pivot tables and I just start comparing. And then I also look at all of them. I look at every single one. Now, again, if you're San Diego, you're not going to be able to look at all 6, 7, 8, 10,000 exceptions. But because I am a small county and basically the one that does all of this for my county, I can look at my under 300 exceptions. So I go through it and I filter it by school. And then if there's anything that looks weird, I actually set up a Zoom meeting with that school to go over it. But this Excel file is easier for me to look at than it is on the actual CalSAAS, because I love just kind of looking at those Excel files and being able to filter out things. So I can look at the different school, I can look at the exception type, and then look at the class title and all the details that come with it. Your summary report, this is in a PDF format. So this one does not come in Excel. So it's not one of my favorite ones. Just kidding. So when it comes in a PDF one, all you can see is different data, and I have one on there. So this is what it looks like. Again, I changed the numbers. No one knows what these numbers are. I changed all of them. So this is not the actual summary report for 22-23. So it says assignments 303, districts monitored 12, schools monitored 25, exceptions 0. Yeah, right? No, that's not right. Anyway, so appropriate assignment determinations. Again, it's a summary of what is happening in your actual county, district, school. It's nice when you have someone that doesn't know CalSAAS, or that is basically like, how many local assignment options do we have? You can run this report and look at it for the previous year. Your exception history. So this is actually a history of it. So you can find out which exceptions were done by every determination. So you can see this one, I modified it on 10/9/2023. Previous was undetermined. New status was MA completed. And then Tanya Royce, who is at one of my districts, She did it on 9/5, whatever exception this was. It was previously undetermined, and new status was MA review. So that is kind of, you can just see that history. It's nice to see at a county level, at a district level, just to see what has been done to each individual determination. And then your superintendent report. So what I do with these superintendent reports is I keep them. I don't necessarily send them out to the superintendents because each district that I have can print their own. Not saying that they do, but they can. So I keep them in a file. And when they ask me for their LCAP data, this is what I pull up. So basically it has that letter to any superintendent saying exactly what they are, identified a total of 2 misassignments, and it has that summary of findings. So every superintendent can look at this if they ask me for it. Usually I've already gone over all of this data, which is why another big reason why I don't send it out is just because I've already gone over it with them. Most of them I have Zoom meetings with, and we're determining exceptions on the phone or on Zoom. All right, we are almost done. We are into extra reporting. So if there is, let's say, you have a teacher that started the year with the correct credential in math, right? They have a single subject math credential. They started the year, they were there on census day, and then they left in December. Not because of a medical leave, but they actually just, they moved, or whatever the reason is, they left. Now the person covering that math class has a single subject in science. Is that the correct credential for that class? No, it's not. Do they have a local assignment? You'd have to check it out. But let's just say for this instance, they don't. So it's not going to show up in CalSAAS because that teacher was there on census day, which is the first Tuesday of October. So what you'll want to do at the county level, or even at a district level, or at a school level, is you'll want to report that misassignment. Ed code, or I'm sorry, Title V, 80123 says that short-term waivers must be reported for the school. So you'll also have to report those as short-term waivers. But there is Ed code out there that says that you have to report a misassignment as soon as you become aware of it. So just make sure that you're doing that and reporting those. And then the TPSL list. Anytime you have someone actually serving on a TPSL, not that they have a TPSL. So if you have someone that does have a TPSL permit, but they're just subbing off of it because they can do that, you don't have to report them here. But if you have someone that has a TPSL permit that is being assigned for one of those leaves, military, I think it's military now, pregnancy leave, medical leave, whatever, and they're serving on that TPSL for that leave, you need to put them in here. That is optional, but it gives the commission really good data when it comes to this TPSL usage. They want to see how many people are actually using it, if it's something that they want to continue. The commission loves data just as much as I do, and they collect all that information. So you want to report it. It's not a bad thing. It's not going to count against you. And I apologize. We are going through construction. So if you hear that, I apologize. This is what I deal with all day. But you do want to report it to the commission because the more data that they have, the better they can use that data to make decisions for the future. All right, so where to go for help? If it's a CalPADS question, you're going to want to go to your CalPADS person in your county, your district, your school, whoever it is that's actually doing your CalPADS report. That's who you're going to want to go to. You want to, and then also your curriculum instruction person. If they're one and the same, you'll want to go to that one person. If it's 2 different people, you'll want to work with those 2 different people. So if it's the assistant principal that is the curriculum instruction, plus the CalPADS person, which might be your tech person, get them both on the phone or a Zoom and say, hey, is this the right course content for this code? They can refer to the CalPADS code set, which is listed there. If they still have questions, you can contact your monitoring authority. You can also contact the CDE CalPADS Operation Office for additional guidance. And I spelled that wrong. It wasn't supposed to be or, it's supposed to be for. Sorry about that. So just make sure that you're reaching out for help, looking at, or at least contacting CDE for any CalPADS questions if you're at the county level. If you're at district level, you'll want to go to your county. It's kind of like one of those help desk chains. You go up the chain and the county is the one that contacts the CalPADS person. CalSAAS resources. So assignment monitoring resources, you have that website right there, which is a great resource. I probably look at that every single day during CalSAAS, just to make sure that I'm looking at it correctly. And it basically has all the information that I went over today because that's where I copied it from, just so you guys know. And then you have CalSAAS information, which is right there. And then you have, and I think it was sent out in the chat in Nisa's presentation, you have your course assignment handout, and then you have appropriate credentials for CalPADS state course codes. It's amazing to me how many people don't know that this is actually there, but you can go in and look like, hey, I have someone in a math class, what credential, or I'm gonna plug it in as a math class in CalPADS, what kind of credential is supposed to be assigned to that math class? So you can look that up. And I know math is one of those easy ones, but when you get into science, it gets a little hairy. You have your biology, your chemistry, physics. There's a bunch of different credentials that might be able to cover that. So you want to look at that and make sure that it is correct. And then you have your appropriate credentials for special education disability categories, appropriate credentials for EL services, and appropriate credentials for non-classroom based assignment. What's great about these links here, or these tables that you use, you just kind of search for what you need. So if you're looking for a CalPADS code, you put in the CalPADS code. If it's 9102, and I have no idea if that's a real code or not. I think it is, but I don't know. I'm not a CalPADS person. So you just put it in and you're like, oh, there it is. There's my CalPADS code. And here's the credential that actually goes with it. Woohoo! So it makes it really nice, especially if your credential person is on vacation, because I like to take 2 weeks of vacation in the summer. So if they're on vacation and need a quick answer, you can go right there. It's not the final say in all of this, but it is really great knowledge. And then if your credential person is on their 2-week vacation, you can take that information. And then when they get back, you say, hey, this is what I looked up. Is that correct? And we will say yes or no. All right, that is it. I told you I had really quick information for you guys. It's just a brief overview. I hope you guys had fun. I know it's very dry. I'm sorry. I tried to insert as much as I could, the funny stuff. But have fun with your CalSAAS reporting whenever it comes out.
All right, thank you, Andy. So I'm going to give everyone about 7 minutes or so, and then at 10:20 we will start with Marcia, and then yeah, I think we're good to go. So everyone just take a 7-minute break. All right, everyone, we're going to resume right now with Marcia Ramirez, and she's from Stanislaus County Office of Education.
Hello, good morning, everybody. So we will reviewing CalSAAS exceptions and understanding the audits. A lot of information was shared with from Niza and Andy, which is great because a lot of it is overlapping. And like Andy said, sorry if it's a little dry and boring, but we will get through it today. So what is an exception? An exception is a result of a comparison between an educator's valid credentials as of census date and the CalPADS course code reporting to CDE for which the educator is assigned. So census date. Census date is the first Wednesday in October, I'm sorry, every year. So this year's census date is going to be on Wednesday, October 2nd. So whatever is reported in CalPADS is what will be taken into your CalSAAS reports for the following year to monitor. Exception types. There are 3 types of exceptions that can generate in CalSAAS. The first one is the CalPADS code, the special education, and the English learner. We're going to be reviewing the CalPADS code first. So CalSAAS will generate 1 course code exception per combination of educator, seed number, school, and CalPADS course or assignment code. So on census date, you want to make sure that your educator has the correct seed and the correct CalPADS course code, and that is what's going to be reported. And if you end up with the exception of CalPADS code, that means there's something wrong. And this exception can only occur in a general education setting or service assignment. So if you see it on a special education assignment, you're going to want to investigate it further. And if it's correct and it's coming up on that, then you're going to want to, when you're using for your determinations, you're going to want to look at the other option for your determinations. So like I mentioned before, having the appropriate course code entered into CalPADS is going to be essential for these reports. And we've talked about this tool, I think all morning, about the appropriate credentials for course codes. I'm just going to click on this link here. So this is something like Andy mentioned, we use throughout CalSAAS reporting. Any codes that are entered into CalSAAS, you can see what the appropriate credential is for that assignment. So you'll see the 1000 self-contained, that's going to require the multiple subject because that is typically a K through 6 assignment. So this is very important when looking over your exceptions and seeing what did not add up, if it's the code or if it's the seed number. If the code's correct and the educator it's just not matching up, then you want to check the seed. I have caught instances where the district did not import the correct seed number, so then you want to make sure that the seed number is correct, because if not, you're going to get that. So that is a great tool to use. And let me get back here really quick. Okay. And then, sorry. The second type, and then, sorry, just to mention, if you do have a CalPADS course code come up that needs to be, that's going to be made as your determination that it's, it's a different code, you want to follow up with your CalPADS person, because if you don't fix this CalPADS code error for, now, then the following reporting year, it's going to come up again on your CalSAAS report. So you just want to make sure you follow up any changes that need to be done with your CalPADS person. That way your reports get smaller every year. The second type of exception is going to be the special education exception that comes up. So CalSAAS will output 1 special education exception per combination, so seed number, school code, and then the disability area. And you'll see the 14 disability areas that are listed through CalSAAS. So courses reporting with the special education as the instructional strategy code through CalPADS will not be checked for holding the appropriate general ed credential. Instead, or authorization, I should say, instead they will be checked for the appropriate special education authorization to cover the student's primary disability. And I just want to note that students are often based in the least restrictive environment, or per their IEP goals that align with their secondary disability. So when you have those special education codes and you see that the teacher and the code don't match, you have to talk to your special education department and figure out, is this student in the least restrictive environment, and is somebody else providing that service for that specific disability. So for special education, it's going to be a lot of investigating, a lot of working with your special education department. Just because it's not one box fits all, it's going to be a lot of individual to making sure that those students have the appropriate teacher with the appropriate credential. And then there's also, for special education categories, you'll see here that you also have, the disability category and everything, credentialed authorizing disability here. So. Alrighty. So the next is going to be the English learner. So CalSAAS will output one English learner exception per combination of seed number, school code, and education service code, which is the CALPADS field that collects the EL service. So like Niza mentioned on that nice chart, when you're looking at it, you want to make sure that the education service level is correct. Because as we know, educators need to have an English learner authorization either embedded into their credential or as a certificate authorizing EL services, or as an emergency permit for CLAD or anything like that. So when looking at when you're getting flagged for English learner, something wasn't coded correctly. So you want to make sure that it is going to be coded as either, ELD, designated, integrated, or no English learner services. So you just want to make sure that in that education service code that you are coding that appropriately, because if not, it's always going to come up, and not every English learner service authorization can provide the same service for every student depending on integrated or designated. So that's what you want to definitely look at when doing your CalPADS. And then again, we have the appropriate credentials for English learner services. So you'll see what integrated, what authorizes integrated ELD, what authorizes designated ELD. So when reporting that, you want to make sure you refer to the chart, making sure that the appropriate, educator is in the appropriate assignment. Because if it's not, it's going to be considered a misassignment. So understanding the CalSAAS audits. So as a monitoring authority, we're going to be looking at all the assignments and determinations that you have made. So determinations, for someone that's new and doesn't know the language, it's pretty much like the decision, the decision that you made on the exception or error that was caused. So we're going to be looking at that. We're going to identify any issues and problems with what determination you made, if there's any. We will review and request additional information. So as the monitoring authority, if we see something like, you put in your comment section, this is an appropriate assignment, we're going to request more info because we don't know if it actually is. So we might say, upload the, documentation to provide, to back up your determination. We make the final, then we as a monitoring authority, once we have discussed with the districts, we will make the final determination based on all the information that that we receive back from the districts. And then LEAs need to make corrections to final determinations, if applicable. So if, again, like I mentioned, if there's CalPADS errors, if there's, any errors in English learner service levels, you want to make sure that all of those get taken care of, and it's to your benefit because your reports will get more precise and get smaller when, the following monitoring year comes, so it's very, very, very important that you do follow up with your CalPADS person to make all those corrections on those final determinations that were made. And I kind of want to go over just some examples of, and I can't show you how it looks without the final determinations, but I will kind of just go over examples that we have here at Stanislaus County, blocked off some names. So as you can see here, the CalPADS code was entered in as 1037. So if we look at 1037, it is the administrative services. So we looked at and said, okay, well, what is this we can see the educator authorization. So we're going to see that. And we see that this person holds these PPS for school counseling and PPS for, or BPPS for school services. So then we're looking at, okay, well, that's not a correct assignment, you know, as an administrator, you need to have an admin services credential, or as a counselor. So something's wrong there. So we're going to ask the district. So when the district reviewed this, excuse me. So when the district reviewed this, they said it's an appropriate assignment. Paula's exception value was changed to 0400. Okay, so code 0400 is actually the PPS school counseling code on CalPADS. So this is not an appropriate assignment. This will now be changed to a CalPADS error because the code was incorrect. So, and then we made here, you know, so this was the district that made this determination. And then here, the monitoring authority made the final that it was a CalPADS error and that the code should be 0400. And then obviously it says it was changed. So they followed up with their CalPADS person. So for special education, we're going to give the alternate SPED example because you're going to see a lot of these, especially if students are receiving services other than the teacher of record. So for this, the assignment was the the disability that was flagged was the orthopedic impairment. The setting, special education, and the subject area, orthopedic impairment. So when we go look at the educator authorizations, we see that this person holds a mild moderate disabilities credential. That service, and if we look at the chart, the mild mod does not authorize to provide the orthopedic impairment service. So we're going to talk to the district and say, what's going on? Is a student receiving orthopedic impairment? Are they not? We want to know what it is. So when they reviewed it, they made their decision, their determination that it's an alternate SPED. And it said orthopedic impairment services are provided by on a contract with SCO. So we here at the county do have we do have employees that will contract to other districts to provide this service, and so it's a very limited service. So this was considered an alternate SPED because somebody else was providing the support for this specific disability. So if we're going to go to the English learner level example. So this was coded as a designated and integrated ELD assignment. And when looking at the educator authorizations, we can see that they hold the certificate of completion of staff development, which is tied to CTE. So it provides specifically designed academic instruction delivered in English, or SADI. So this precise EL authorization does not allow to teach both integrated and designated ELD. So we're going to ask the district, are they teaching this? Are they not? Or do they have students that have both, that need both services? Because if it is, it's going to be a misassignment because they're not appropriately credentialed. So we asked, they had said it's an appropriate assignment because they have the certificate. And we said, no, just because they have it doesn't mean. So we had to ask, and it was no, they should only be doing integrated integrated, not integrated and designated. So this again was a CalPADS error. So we want to, like I said, we want to make sure that they followed up with their CalPADS person, because that's going to come up a lot. And I see the English learner level a lot, especially when it comes to like the CTE placements. They're just being coded as designated and integrated and not given the precise service level for what they're teaching. Okay. And that is all for me. If you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A.
All right, everyone, how about we take a quick 5-minute break and then we get started on the Q&A. So we will come back at 10:40. All right, everyone, we're going to begin a little bit earlier. I know our Q&A was at 11, but it's okay. We're going to start at 10:40 and then just keep the questions coming. Jenny is going to begin by asking the questions, and then our presenters are going to go ahead and answer those.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. So the first set of questions is in reference to the first presentation by Nitsa. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first question, I don't think teachers on leave 6018 show up on the 4.5. Is that new?
No, it's actually not new. I can definitely post a link here that shows that the CDE guidance states that teachers on leave of absence with the code 6018 do show up on your 4.5 report.
How would you report intervention teachers?
RTI teachers and MTSS teachers, those are actually have their own CalPADS course code of 9230. They get their own assignment. They show up on the 4.3 report, but this is one of the support assignments that I did speak about that do not require student roster. And the reason for that is because, RTI, MTSS students kind of come in and out. So it's just a support assignment.
Where can we find all the codes?
We can definitely post a link to the CalPADS code sets, but helpful. I literally go to Google, I say CalPADS code sets, and it gets me right to the spreadsheet, which I love because I love spreadsheets too, like Andy. Make sure that when that spreadsheet is huge because it's the whole history of all the codes that have ever existed in CalPADS. So make sure that you are filtering. You want to make sure that you are not capturing anything that has an end date. We don't care about that for current reporting. And so you want to make sure that you're filtering to anything that does not have an end date.
Okay, next question, will the years of service update with the seed in CalPADS?
No, they will not. That is part of the demographic information that each district must populate for their employees. And so that's why there could be an inconsistency, because if somebody comes from a district where they've been for 20 years and they come new to your district, sometimes you think, well, that's their first year with us. And so that's not. It doesn't transfer. Quick question for you guys, as where are we posting the links for like the CalPADS code sets? Is it on the
Chat, just make sure it's to everyone.
Okay, got it.
Okay, next question. Can an individual with a special education credential teach ELD1 or English language development in a general education setting if they have an ELA1 authorization?
Does anybody care to take it? I could. Yeah. So ELD course is covered by the CLAD certificate, the ELA1 authorization, the bilingual authorization. And so I can post the link, the leaflet, the CTC leaflet that talks about which credentials or which authorizations cover each course for EL courses is the CL 6222. And so you want to take a look at it, but the ELA1 embedded in a credential, the CLAD certificate, the bilingual authorization, that's gonna be what you need for an ELD course.
Great. Is a committee on assignment needed for all STEM assignments?
No. STEM assignments can, depending on the subcategory, they can be covered by depending on the subcategory, right? So you want to look at the chart and see, okay, 92205, what is it? Design and modeling. That, it could be a math credential, science credential, an ITE credential. Now, if you're covering the assignment with the committee on assignment because the teacher has a credential that is not any one of these, then you want to make sure that you're reporting it through CalPADS. But no, committee on assignment is just you're covering the assignment because the teacher that you want to teach a class doesn't have the credential.
What were the 4 single subject credentials that cover CTE again?
Business, home ec, ITE, and agriculture. And let me just say that those credentials specifically cover some CTE classes. It's not like I'm saying, oh, business credential covers every CTE class, or an ag credential covers every CTE class. There's specific courses that these 4 single subject credentials cover. And again, on that chart that we've shared, I think all 3 of us shared that link. You could tell, you'd be able to find the credential and what it covers.
So for ELD, or English Language Development, ELAS authorization does count, or yes? No?
So the current California Teacher Preparation authorizes, I should say, the teachers who are receiving the credentials from the current teacher preparation end up with EL authorization to provide instruction to EL students in their content area. So say a single subject math teacher can provide instruction in math to EL students, but the ELAS, ELAE, ELAM, the certificate on completion of staff development, all of those are limited to SEDAI only and do not authorize ELD, standalone ELD. Again, standalone ELD is covered by ELA1, CLAT certificate, bilingual authorization, BCLAD, single subject world languages ELD, and I think that might be it. I don't know if I'm forgetting any, ladies.
I think you got them all. If a teacher is on a leave of absence and has a long-term substitute, who should be reported as the teacher of record?
The teacher of record, even if she is on leave of absence. Again, we don't report subs unless they are providing instruction on census date in a vacancy. And that's a misassignment.
And just to add on that, if someone is covering that leave of absence, if they're on a TPSL, you want to report them in that TPSL area that I talked about.
We are a unified district and would like to utilize our CTE credential holders at the middle school level. If we use course code 7000 Exploratory Career Technical Education, can we have a single course such as robotics, or do we need to have a pathway?
So CTE courses are utilized at the middle school without a pathway. Now, this is more of a CDE question, so I'd say definitely double check with them. But I do know that exploratory courses are used widely in specifically in middle school, without a pathway. But again, that is not CTC purview, which is kind of what we all represent here. It's more of a CDE question, so you definitely want to double check.
What type of credential does an EL coordinator need to hold?
It depends. It depends on what exactly are they doing, right? Is it an EL coordinator at the district that is developing and planning material for the whole district? That's an admin position. Or is it an EL coordinator that is running a program at one school site? That is a position that can be covered by somebody holding an a teaching credential, and there's an ed code, Title 5, 8004.1A, I want to say. So it really depends on, are they district-wide? Are they just at one side? And what specifically are they doing? Is there anything else that I'm missing?
All right, we'll go on to the next question. Our district is implementing a high school level elective course titled Math 1 Support to support both general ed and special ed students who are encountering challenges in math. Could you provide guidance on the credentials that are typically required for instructors teaching a combined general education, special education, math intervention elective at the high school level?
Okay, so the way I read this, and I don't know if you guys agree with me, but if you are providing intervention or, any kind of like tutoring in one specific area, then the credential in that specific area is required. Meaning, if you have a math support class for general ed, you need a single subject in math. And if you have a math support in special education for special education students, and you need to have a special education credential, that means that I would highly suggest that you separate the two, because the credential requirements are going to be different. You could potentially, local assignment options are used in general education settings. But you still need a special education credential. Never mind, I take back what I was thinking about. I'm always thinking of the loopholes. How can we make it happen, right? So I'm thinking, what do you guys think about district using a local assignment option to provide math, a special education teacher providing instruction to those math general ed students with a local assignment option if they have enough units? That might work.
I was gonna suggest that, have a special ed teacher on that local assignment.
The other way is not going to work though, because
No,
right? Because you couldn't have a general ed teacher providing instruction to the special education students. So potentially, SPED teacher providing instruction to general education students with the local assignment option, maybe, if you're trying to be creative.
but make sure to check with your monitoring authority, your county, just in case that's something that they don't want to do, because every county, every district, every school operates differently.
That is true.
Good point. Can an individual with a CTE credential in arts, media, and entertainment teach music in elementary using Prop 28 funding?
Ooh, I love this question. Okay, so if you guys recall recently, the governor is actually in the governor's budget, there's a proposition to provide money to the CTC so that they can create a CTE credential specifically for use in the elementary settings, music and or art. And with that, there's been talks about, creating a CTE course at the elementary site. Now, the current standards for CTE classes are for middle school and higher. So is it possible, Prop 28 funds, that's a seat, the money coming from CDE. It's all fairly new. We've never seen a CTE credential cover an elementary class before. There's talks about that right now. The CTC has a credential, a page directly speaking about this topic. And they say, yes, it's possible if the standards were utilized correctly to create the course, but it's something that would be new to us.
Are those elementary art classes and those elementary art, I'm sorry, I think this was answered in the previous question.
The AME authorization. Yeah, that's the current one, arts, media, and entertainment.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
again, the standards for that specific credential are middle school and high school, and so there's then that debate. Andy, I talk with my hands too, so I'm like, where are my hands? Okay.
Yes, it's very frustrating on Zoom,
Yeah.
especially when they disappear.
Okay, how do you report adapted PE in a special education setting if the teacher is required to have a DHH?
Adapted PE services and DHH services are different. So you would report the APE teacher providing APE services, and then you would report DHH teacher providing DHH services. I'm not really sure if you want to clarify that question, maybe.
Are they talking about like maybe if they have deaf and hard of hearing disability?
That could be. I mean, they would show up. So if you have a teacher and the primary disability of the student is DHH, it's going to come up as an exception, but then you would clear it by communicating with your monitoring authority and saying, oh, the DHH teacher is so and so.
Yeah, and so usually it's only the case manager that gets reported as far as the disability service ones. I didn't think that they did. I thought they were input differently.
I think it depends, again, check with your monitoring authority because they might have you report things just a tad bit different and provide different guidance. So do definitely check with them in regards to this one.
Does a CTE credential cover the departmental settings at the elementary level?
We've never seen it. Maybe there's a new credential, yeah.
Okay. What are the codes to be used to report K through 6 departmentalized settings?
PE is, I want to say 9311. They each have their own, I'm sorry, and I did keep track of them, but now I don't know where they're at. Each one does have its own specific code though, and okay, so art is 9022. Dance is 9080. Adaptive PE is 9313. Physical education has different ones depending on if it's K6 or just middle school. And so on that link, you'll be able to find all of the different current CalPADS codes.
This might be a follow-up. So it's standalone right now, and the local assignment option has an exception for CTE credentials.
Local assignment options can be used in general ed settings only. You cannot use local assignment options for CTE settings or special education assignments, right? So could you potentially use a CTE holder to teach in a general ed setting with a local assignment option? Yes, but it depends on the local assignment option. And it also has to do a lot with your monitoring authority. So local assignment options do vary a little bit more from county to county, but typically, again, they can be used in general ed settings only, and they never supersede special education rules and EL authorization rules. Remember, those are protected populations in California, our most protected populations in California.
So this would apply to dual credit classes too, or just straight college credit classes? I feel like this is maybe a follow-up.
Are we talking about the EL services or are we talking about the local assignment options? It depends.
Yeah. Sorry, I think we need more information on this one to be able to answer it accurately. So please follow up if you're still online. Next question, I think this is the last one that was in the section for your presentation, Itza, at the beginning at least. What is the credential needed for your book?
English and or art. And those are the single subject, but of course, supplementary authorizations, subject matter authorizations, local assignment options, but those are the two areas, English or art.
Yeah, you really have to look what that course is actually teaching. If it's a yearbook course and they're focusing more on the artistic ability of it, it would be art. If they're focusing on more like the journalistic stuff, it would definitely be English.
The next section focused more on Andy's presentation. Some of these are going to be similar to Marcia's as well. So first one up is, when does assignment monitoring begin and when does it end?
Okay, so when is it supposed to begin? So they keep telling us that it's supposed to begin like now, but obviously that hasn't happened ever. It really depends on when Fall 2 data is submitted to CTC from CDE. And with all the extensions that they've had with Fall 2 data, it makes it hard for them to get it out to us before the end of the school year. So lately, or every single time, they have opened up credential monitoring in June. And it's due, I believe, October 31st. And the reason they open it up in June is because it gives people the ability to start working on it. And keep in mind, it confuses my districts all the time that they open it up in June and it's due October 31st for the previous year. Not talking about this year, we're talking about the previous year. So some districts are closed during the summer, and that's why it's such a long time they actually open it up.
What are determinations?
Determinations, so when you get an exception in CalSAAS, so say it says CalPADS code exception, and you determine whether or not it's a misassignment, if it's a CalPADS code error, and so you're basically picking that explanation to that exception.
What about when you have a push-in situation? The student may have a primary teacher with the correct credential, but is pushed into a class for part of the day.
As far as I'm aware, Nisa, you're more familiar with CalPADS than I am. I'm in it, but I'm not like in it. Those push-in situations, those kiddos are reported differently when it comes to push-in services. And so they're reported, trying to remember how they're actually reported as far as like the push-in services. I think they're on their own, like the special ed teacher is on its own little island when it comes to CalPADS. And they're reported under that teacher and then reported in general ed for the other teachers. Is that right, Nisa?
So,
Could be totally wrong.
with the push-in, so really we're talking about the students who are special education, who have IEPs and are pushed into or streamlined into general ed settings, right? Because that's the least restrictive environment. And so what happens is they go into a general education setting. They are reporting with the teacher, the general education teacher of record. That's where, with that roster, it's gonna create an exception, of course, because the disability will show up, and then you're gonna say who is the person providing, during CalSAAS, you'll say who is the person providing the services. Now, it's super important though that if there are push in or pull out services, whatever it is, those are what we call our RSP teachers. And so you would report that RSP teacher with the 9231 course, and it does not require a student roster. So you'll never be able to say, oh, I mean, you could, but it creates more problems if you attach a student roster. But you would report them at the site where that student is at as having the 9231 course code. And so when CalSAAS comes around, you'll be able to say, okay, Andy Thomas is the RSP teacher, the SPED teacher providing the service.
How can we avoid English language learner errors when teachers were not expected to have English learner authorizations years ago?
You can't.
Yep.
Yeah. You really can't. Those teachers were expected to either complete an EL authorization course or the professional development in order to gain that. Those that didn't, now if they get an EL student, they need to complete that course in order to get that EL authorization, or you will get an exception. And it is not good practice to switch a student to a different teacher that has an EL authorization, because you can definitely get in trouble as far as litigation when you do that.
And the truth is, if a teacher is providing instruction to an EL student, they must have the authorization. And so if they didn't do it years ago because it wasn't required, they have to go out and pursue it now, or otherwise they cannot provide the instruction. Now, these EL students and special education students, both of these services are highly litigated. So don't, make sure that you're providing the instruction to these students. Otherwise, you're going to not only find yourself in trouble with CDE during audit, findings, but also the parents and student advocacy groups can go after you because you're not providing the services that this student it's required.
Yeah, we've had districts that had that issue, and we had them either, if they've never had an emergency CLAD before, hop on one as soon as possible to cover them for the ELA one, for the EL service. And then they had to work on it. Unfortunately, they didn't want to because they'd been teaching for so many years, but they had to either take the CTEL exams or do the coursework and get the ELA one authorization.
And you know what, I'll add this there. Teachers who are coming from out of state right now, most are not gonna get EL authorization, right? There are some endorsements from out of state who will transfer it in, but for the most part, you're not gonna get a teacher who has EL authorization. So you definitely want to be looking at applying for an emergency CLAD in the meantime, and doing the CTEL test or the program as soon as possible. Now, do note that for California residents right now, the CTELs are free of charge if the educator registers by June 20th. They have a year to complete the test, but they are free of charge if they register by June 20th. And that waiver is going away, so definitely pass on the word.
And those CTEL tests, sorry, I was going to say courses, the CTEL tests are only given during certain times of the year. So keep that in mind as well. If someone's like, oh, I can complete those all over the summer, you can't, because there's a window of opportunity that you have to take test 1, test 2, test 3 kind of thing.
Okay, what are the consequences for the district if they determine some exceptions are true misassignments once CalSAAS closes?
And they didn't report them, is what I'm assuming, that they were true misassignments and they didn't report them. What are the consequences? CTC will find it because they go through the data after you submit it, and they go through the data and determine if any of your determinations were misassignments. And if they're asking about if it's actually a misassignment that they reported in CalSAAS closed, then those misassignments do show up on the California data dashboard. There are no fiscal consequences at this point. We've always heard that, it's a threat, but nothing at this moment. They have to report it on their LCAP as well.
Now, you know what? It's important to add too that they may not show up as misassignments, but immediately. But on the CDE report, on the TAMO report, the Teacher Assignment Monitoring Outcome report, they'll show up as like incomplete, which is kind of worse because then you end up at your board meeting having to explain to the public, to parent groups, advocacy groups, what are these assignments? At least when we're clear, okay, this was wrong and we're fixing it, you can kind of explain it, but we're in the incomplete and you don't really know how to explain it, that's almost worse. So you want to make sure that you're being diligent about going through your exceptions and so you know what hits you. Now, the TAMO results is hitting a bunch of different things. The data quest, right? The dashboard, the LCAP priority 1, your SARC report is now directly from the data coming from here. In the past, we used to be able to like edit that information or manually enter it. We can't do that anymore. It's coming directly from these results. So although there are no direct financial implications right now, there's a bunch of other things that are being reported with this data. So It's important, yeah.
How do you register the English learner certificate with CTC? I ran a report and found some of my older teachers have the certificate, but it is not fully registered with CTC.
So I'm assuming that you mean the professional development certificate. You can't anymore. There was one time that they gave us all a spreadsheet that we could have sent to CTC, but you can't anymore. So what you have to do in CalSAAS is every year you have to upload that information, that certificate, with that determination that it's a appropriate assignment, and upload that certificate for that teacher.
Can an individual with a special education credential teach ELD in a general education setting if they have an ELA1 authorization? And sorry, we have answered this question live before, and the answer is yes, due to the ELA1 authorization. What does MA misassigned mean?
Trying to remember, not in CalSAAS right now, monitoring authority misassignment. So that means that maybe it wasn't a misassignment determined at the actual district level. It was determined, I'm sorry. Totally getting confused. This is where you actually report it yourself. So this is a monitoring authority misassignment that you found after census day. So that's what it means, is one that wasn't found during census time and you found it later. Or even if it was found during census time, but it wasn't reported or caught during census, you definitely want to report those misassignments.
Perfect example, Andy. You know, if I spoke about during my presentation the need for a school librarian, right? So the monitoring authority, we'll ask you if they don't see it on the reporting, who is your school librarian? And if you didn't have one, we will manually report the misassignment.
Yeah, and they're really wanting that reported now with the librarians. And again, it's all for data. They want to know how many are out there, because they know that this school librarian credential is very rare. So, I think it was like 20% of available ones are actually being used or something like that. And they want to know how many people actually have a librarian.
CTE credential holders assigned teacher assistant courses. Is this a local level decision or a local assignment option to justify the exception?
No, it would actually be, that's what I talked about in my presentation, because that happened to me last year. We had some teacher assistants for CTE, as long as it's within that category that they're teaching CTE for the teacher assistants. It's just appropriately assigned. You don't have to mark local assignment. It's just appropriately assigned.
And definitely do check with your monitoring authority on this one, because if the students are like, for example, if the student assigned to a CTE teacher is getting general education credit, then that's considered a general education elective and is not covered by a CTE credential. And so you definitely do want to verify for student assistance and those true electives. They've caused a lot of problems with CalSAAS, and CTC is aware of it. There's just the law reads the way that it just reads right now, right? So fully elective or true elective courses are covered by a full credential based on BA in student teaching, which CTE does, it's not. So we're aware of how silly it sounds, and they are as well. But for right now, until it's fixed, that's just kind of what we have.
Good point.
Is there an assignment monitoring calendar, for example, something that would show upcoming census day?
I don't know of a calendar, and I think I said it was the first Tuesday. It's the first Wednesday of October. So just keep that in mind. First Wednesday, Census Day. And if you are unaware of that, go around your CalPADS people on Census Day. They're kind of freaking out that day.
And also, just so you know, so the census date is the first Wednesday of every October. Fall to data. Up to this point, it's been due like towards the end of February, the beginning of March. It's supposed to be now earlier and earlier. And in fact, it's now you can start reporting fall to data earlier because of the There's legislation that now says that by 2026, we're gonna be reporting information like way sooner than we have. So that's kind of how it's supposed to be. Assignment monitoring is supposed to happen April through June. Now, we've not seen it, but hopefully so.
You mentioned that short-term waivers get reported. What about variable term waivers?
What I meant about the short-term waivers is you actually have to manually report those. Short-term waivers are not anything that gets or goes through the application process through CTC. It's basically just a piece of paper, at least it is at my office, that says, hey, this person's on a short-term waiver. So it doesn't go to the CTC, so it doesn't go through CalPADS, it doesn't go through CalSAAS, so you have to report those manually. Variable term waivers do get matched up in CalSAAS to the course code and the teacher that's actually teaching it that's on the variable term waiver.
How about your dual or concurrent enrollment programs? Are you using the correct attribute to indicate college credit only or dual credit? Not sure what to do. And then I'm sorry, this is a shared resource. We're going to put this in the chat. Sorry about that. Next question. Are 922201 through 9222-11 the only CalPADS course codes for the middle school STEM classes?
You know,
Yeah.
like I said, oh, go ahead, Nisa. You're in those codes all the time.
Yeah, STEM classes are 9222, and then they have the sub categories, which are the 01 through 11. So I don't see any other STEM CalPADS courses. Can you think of any others, Sandy?
I can't. But definitely, if you have questions, ask your CalPADS people. You can always ask CDE or download the CalPADS codes and weed through all the Excel data.
Can you please go over the support assignment codes again?
Yeah, so the 9103, those are English support. 9230 are your RTE, so your intervention, or MTTS, the multi-tier system support. 9231 are for your resource teachers. 9245 are foundational math support, and 9246 are higher math support.
As a charter, is it possible for someone with an education specialist credential to teach an elective class if they sign a consent form? I have looked into this for a while and it has been as clear as mud.
Yeah, it is as clear as mud. And I can't give you a definite answer because that's really a local decision. So check with your monitoring authority.
I'll tell you what we do in Ventura. If it is a true elective, now be careful with electives, right? Because sometimes we think they're true electives and they're not. If they're true electives, then a full credential based on BA in student teaching would work. However, that is a monitoring authority question because they sometimes the counties like to stay within the population that they that their credential authorizes.
How can an education I'm sorry, were you going to add something else, Nisa?
So clear as mud.
How can an education specialist add the autism authorization?
They got to go take classes.
Yeah, their program.
Yep. Sorry, didn't mean to step on you.
Oh,
there.
no, you're fine.
Great. And I think this is around the time that Marcia was doing her presentation, but I know some of these questions cross over. What does the limited authorization mean listed under the CalPADS codes?
I think they might be referring to when you go to the CalPADS code list, it'll say limited authorizations and it's a supplementary, introductory. So that just means that when it's a supplementary or introductory, you want to read the actual document just to make sure you're following within curriculum standards, within grade level standards. So I think that's what they're meaning under that list codes there.
When you say to have the CalPADS admin make corrections, do you mean updating the historical data in CalPADS to match the incorrect CalPADS code or setting as determined via CalSAAS review?
So I don't have a CalPADS hat. So typically we'll always say refer to your CalPADS person because they'll be able to guide you on if you tell them like, hey, this admin is coded incorrectly. We need code 0137. Can you update this for this current school year to make sure it's correct? I think it's the wording that you're going to use with your CalPADS person. I don't do CalPADS, so I can't really tell you like how it looks. And but everything that gets reported, I know here a lot of districts use Aries, so just making sure everything's is correct in Aries because it pulls to CalPADS. So yeah, definitely just checking with your CalPADS admin and how you can fix that code so it doesn't show up for the following year.
Yeah,
If I can add something to that, in your SIS system, typically around this time, assignments roll over to the next school year, right? And so if you don't fix, if you find it through auditing and you don't let them know, hey, you're using the wrong code, like it shouldn't have been this, it should be this. If you don't fix it now, it's probably going to roll over to the next school year, which will then impact the audit. And you won't see it until it's done.
yeah, and just keep in mind if you find anything through CalSAAS and it needs to be updated, you can't fix it for that year that CalSAAS is being monitored. You just have to mark it as whatever the determination is and move forward.
How would you report emergency credentialed staff, such as short-term staff permit, variable term waiver, or provisional internship permit?
You'll report them as normal because again, the seed number will then pull their credential information and it's going to match whatever credential, emergency credential that they filed for permit they filed for. So it'll link up that information so you can report them as normal. I think the only one that we talked about was different was that short-term waiver person.
Does making predetermined misassignment for the purpose of allowing CTE teachers to have teachers' aides have any negative impact on our CalSAAS report if the class is taught by CTE credentialed teacher teaching within their correct subject area or pathway?
Okay, so if the assignment is for a CTE assistant, then that works. If it's a CTE teacher just doing the teacher's aid, that's not going to work. There is no local assignment option for that, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if it's a CTE pathway and they're working as an FFA, assistant in the classroom, then those are fine. If it's not, if it's just they're just doing the home, that assistant portion, it's not going to work. There's no local assignment option for that. And yes, it does affect you. It's going to show up on your report. Public information. And if you keep having these misassignments, because you're just going to put them in there and you're just having these misassignments, the CTC is going to catch it. And ultimately, we always tell our districts, it comes down to the administrators who are authorizing these assignments. That's their credential. That's what they're there for. That's why they pay them the big bucks, to make sure everyone's correctly in place. Someone's not, they're going to, report that to the district. So, I would not continuously do that. If we, as a monitoring authority, we can flag it, and we do reach out to districts, superintendents, and say, hey, these assignments are an ongoing issue and they can't keep going on. So,
I want to add something to that. Districts, charters, counties, we do not have authorization to say, I'm just going to take a misassignment. It doesn't work like that. There's an education code, and I don't have it right off the top of my head, but that says that we have 30 calendar days from the discovery of a misassignment to fix it. So if a district chooses to, I'm going to take a misassignment, we don't work that way. We will report it to the commission. The commission can go against the superintendent's credential. And so that is huge. You don't want to do that.
You mentioned that we should report school psychologists and that a teacher is on leave. Can you clarify, please?
Is that mine?
yeah, I think that was yours, Niza. Yeah.
Okay, so you should report a school psychologist. Yes, you should. Even if you don't employ them, like even if you contract out, if they're providing services to your students, yes, you need to report them, and they would show up on your 5.5 report. A teacher that is on leave of absence, Absolutely. You will report them with the 6018 course code, and they would show up on the on the 4.5 report as well.
And
Yeah.
I wanted to add on to that speech people as well. So make sure you're reporting all of your service providers, your DHH people, your VI, your school psychs, your speech. A lot of speech, at least for us, are contracted people. So get in contact with whoever is doing your contracts and make sure you're getting that information, whether you or whoever it is puts it into your student information system to report it to CalPADS.
Can a teacher with bilingual authorization Mandarin teach a class without BCLAT?
So, okay, so if it's a dual immersion class with Mandarin, they'll need to have the BCLAD in Mandarin to be able to teach that assignment. If it's a single if it's a single subject or it's a world languages Mandarin, they'll need to have the single subject in Mandarin to teach that. The Mandarin, world languages Mandarin and BCLAD Mandarin are totally different things, even though they are probably bilingual and they can do it. It's not the same because BCLAD, dual immersion class is teaching the subjects in the language of Mandarin. Single subject Mandarin, you are learning you're learning Mandarin, grammar, everything from that. So if it's a BCLAD Mandarin class, they have to have a BCLAD in Mandarin. And they can also do an emergency BCLAD as long as they meet the language proficiency for that, I believe, right? For Mandarin, yeah.
Does a SPED credential qualify for a local assignment option based on this explanation? 12 or 6 upper semester units. This local assignment option may be used to assign staff to a departmentalized setting in grades 8 and below and in any content area. LEA must verify that the staff member has an elementary or multiple subject-based teaching credential and 12 or 6 upper semester units in the content that will be taught. So I think that the first is a question, the second is the information that the person found on the CTC site.
Yeah, so I think we've kind of touched a little bit upon this already. You want to reach out to your monitoring authority because you want to make sure when using a local assignment option, they do have that BA with the student teaching. It gets a little dicey because the monitoring authority might be, well, they had an intern credential, so did they really do student teaching? Is that the language based? So reach out to your monitoring authority to see if, to further go into if they would allow, if they recommend that that LAO is appropriate for that assignment.
Local assignment options definitely do call for degrees, most of them. Some of them, don't call for student teaching, but the one that you're referring to, either you're talking about the 44256B, which is a multiple subject holder, or the 44258.2, which is a single subject holder, to teach departmentalized in a middle school setting with the 12 units or 6 units. And in that case, a SPED credential, which does meet the requirement, bachelor's degree and student teaching would be appropriate. But again, always good rule of thumb, like check with your monitoring authority.
Regarding Math 1 support question above, can we assign 2 teachers, general ed and 1 SPED in math intervention class, like in unified PE courses?
Is this kind of referring to is that push and pull out method, like that push-in method that we talked about? I think I'm not too sure.
I think they were referring to the high school foundation, right? The foundational support.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, you can have one class and just separate the reporting, if it's the general ed teacher providing the report, and then you have a resource teacher push in services for the SPED. Then that's how you report it, but it really has to do with what's happening in the classroom and what's the best, easiest, cleanest way to report it.
Can one who works in a TK-12 school and holds a mild mod credential serve a TK student on an IEP, or is a TK certificate or credential needed in addition?
Well, it depends on the depends on the IEP. Is a student and the placement of the student, I would assume. for that, because if it's a special needs student and they're TK, then you could probably do it. If they need to receive TK in a general ed setting, then you wouldn't be qualified to do it. You'd need a TK or multiple subject with the TK person doing that. So I think it depends on the verbiage of what how the IEP has them set up.
And if they're talking about the TK like rule that's set out by CDE, that's not under the purview of CTC. So if you ever ask CTC, hey, can this person teach TK? They will always tell you yes. Because they are authorized to teach TK, but as far as funding purposes, which is from CDE, they have to have, if for special ed, it would be the early childhood, I think it's the early childhood credential in order to qualify for that CDE one, or the 24 units of ECE or a child development permit.
Yeah, I mean, TK settings are covered by the mouth-to-mouth support needs, extensive support needs, right? The TK setting, because remember, TK is the first part of kindergarten, right? So it's treated like it's kindergarten, to a certain degree. Special education, the CDE requirements that will come in effect August 1, 2024, do not apply for special education setting.
2025.
2025, sorry. 2025. Thank you, good catch.
I don't want to freak people out.
Yes. Those don't apply to special education settings. Now, the new early childhood SPED credential, the newer one that, in effect as of July 2022, does cover in grades up to kindergarten. And so typically though, for TK, you'll see either mouth-to-mouth support needs or an extensive support needs based on the level of support that the student needs, based on the IEP.
And if they have an older early childhood intervention, I forget what it's always called, but the early childhood one, they can get that bridge authorization to cover TK. So if you haven't done the bridge authorization with those teachers yet, I would definitely contact your CELPA and see how they can get that, just so funding is not something that you're worried about with TK.
Can a fully credentialed teacher, for example, single subject, teach CTE adult education courses?
So adult ed isn't considered an alternative setting. However, you'd have to it's a CTE course. Is there funding going to, I think also in the adult setting there, I mean, CTE is also considered in that aspect for funding. So you'd want to investigate if they're getting the funding for it, then it'll need to match the CTE credential holder for whatever assignment it is. Even though adult education is considered an alternative setting.
The CTE credential is K-12 authorized already. There are 3 levels of standards: career ready, anchor, and pathway specific. And the pathway standards do not state grades 7 through 12. I think someone was helping answer the question. Thank you so much. What is the CalSAAS monitoring timeline? How are we notified the window is open to correct exceptions? After the LEA window closes, when and how are we notified of the monitoring outcomes? We always seem to have surprises that we had cleared, but never see who those surprise misassignments belong to.
So we tell our districts here at Stanislaus, we give them a timeline because we kind of go off the fiscal year. So we'll say like, July 1, but it's never open. It's typically not open for monitoring till later. I think last year was July 22nd. So we ask the districts and we send out all the information because we do receive emails from the CTC in regards to when it opens and the timelines and everything. So we do send that out to our districts here. And then we tell our districts, you have from this, since it's open all the way through September 30th to get all your determinations in for our review. We help them review along the way, kind of makes it easier. Whoever wants to meet with us, we meet with them and we go through their determinations or exceptions, I should say. But after the 30th of September, we then ask like everything be at least finalized for them. And then we start going through it to make sure everything's correct, so we can start sending those reports to the CTC. And so the final report's due October 30th to the state. Typically, I'm trying to remember if the reports get sent out. We just kind of always tell people, keep on your CalSAAS, even though it closes. Just keep on it, because you can generate your reports once the CTC or the CD, everyone's done reviewing it. You can pull up your reports. I know that we pull up ours for our county office and our assignments that we have here, and we review that with our assistant superintendent. So we try to send out that information, because we, as monitoring authorities, we get that information kind of first, those emails. And I don't know, I think, are other people allowed to sign up for those notifications? Yeah, so maybe we look for the link right now, so you can sign up for any emails from the CTC, or you're more than welcome to subscribe to their different emails that they have, because they have some for the, the code of correspondence and things like that. So if that's an option for you, then I would definitely sign up to get all the CalSAAS notifications.
Do we need to report anything if we contract for adaptive PE?
Yes, always report anybody that's contracted. I think we've kind of stressed this, report it, because the state needs to know the need, because sometimes funding will go out to programs if they know there's a need for adaptive PE teachers or SLPs. So yes, definitely report anybody that's contracted.
We will be using CALPADS code 9236 for an elementary career exploration course teaching art. This code allows for a CTE credential. Will this produce a misassignment?
Yes. Well, not a misassignment. It'll always produce an exception.
Yeah, it'll produce an exception, and then you're to review it, and then with your monitoring authority and review that. And then if it's appropriate, then it'll be considered a correct it's a correct assignment.
Now, let me say, careful, because 9236 is not a CTE course. It's a general education course.
Oh.
And so it does not allow for a CTE credential.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I missed that part too.
Yeah, sorry.
So if a person has a CTE arts media, can they teach the artistic side of your book with local assignment?
No, CTE cannot go into general education. I think Niza said the 4 areas of general ed that can go into CTE, but it's not vice versa. So no, it has to be English or I'm just blanking on the other art. Sorry.
Actually, I think you got it backwards. So I look, yes, they can use a local assignment option because it's a general education setting. So yearbook, it's a general education setting. So you could have a CTE credential if you use like the
Art. Yeah,
an
sorry.
assignment. You just cannot go the other way around from general education to CTE. Does that?
Okay. Sorry, but I forgot about the art portion.
In regard to the math support class question, it was stated that the person providing instruction in math or English per se must hold a credential in that subject. In a departmentalized setting, if the student already has a math course and is only taking the additional course for support, I was told that the person providing instruction does not have to hold a credential in that discipline. We have had educators in these exact examples who do this under an elective course. These settings do not generate exceptions. Am I wrong?
Yeah. Intervention in one specific area, like math, requires the math credential or authorization, even if they are already getting math credit and this is just a support class.
So assignment monitoring will begin sometime soon and close in October, correct? Also, we will be doing assignment monitoring for the 23-24 school year during summer 2024.
Correct. Yeah. So it closes on October 30th. You'll be monitoring the previous school year 23-24. So I know it'll be hard to kind of switch between the school years when you're looking at your program software systems for all those teachers that are no longer there. But yes, it'll be, and it should start we say now, but it's good sometime in July, probably. I'm always looking at that date.
But the
And
close
it
date is
changes
dependent
every
on the start date, right?
Yes, and it changes every year, I feel like. And it again, it just depends on when they CTC gets that fall to CalPADS data. And I will tell you, anyone that is on the CTC office hours, this is a question that comes up quite frequently is when will it open?
You don't know. Soon.
Can push-in services be provided by a non-credentialed staff under the supervision of a certificated teacher?
I'm gonna say no. Definitely talk to your monitoring authority about the setting, but you typically know it should be a credentialed staff providing services. I know this has come, I want to say it's come up before here, but no, it has to be credentialed.
And you have scenarios like, for example, where a special education assistant, what are they called? Not TAs, but
Instructional or
functional,
paraprofessionals.
where they're providing like one-on-one help to students. That's a little bit different than providing actual services, right? So if that's what you're referring to, then that doesn't need a credential at all. But if you're thinking it needs a credential, then then
Is the SA12 an older code for the CLAD? Is it the same as the ELA 1?
Yeah, it's the older, when you look on the document, it'll say SA12.
We are an elementary school looking to hire an art teacher. What credential will they need? The individual will likely only teach art or teach art and one other class a week.
Art, art.
but what other class?
Right. I was just gonna say
Yeah,
that. What's the
but-
other class?
What
Yeah,
other class? Because then you could have a single subject, or you can have a multiple subject or single
Yeah.
subject in another area with an art supplementary authorization. You can have a full credential with the local assignment option. The other class, though, you threw like a
curveball.
We have a 6th grade digital media art elective class. Can a teacher with a CTE in art and media teach on a course code, or do they need a clear single subject credential?
I think it's kind of goes along, well,
What standards were
Yeah.
utilized to create the course? Is it a CTE course? Did the curriculum team create the course utilizing CTE standards or academic standards? That's going to determine what credential is needed.
Librarian role, does this apply to charter schools?
yeah, so charter schools are now having to align with the public school system. So I think by 2025, everybody needs to be appropriately credentialed. Correct me if I'm wrong on the date. But looking now, you should be looking at getting those people credentialed. But yes, I mean, technically right now, I guess we're still in that space where no, but by 2025, once you start reporting, they should have the appropriate credential for the librarian.
And charter schools do have a little bit of variance in service providers, right? Like admin, psychologists, school nurses, that kind of thing, in that CalSAAS will not monitor. So you definitely want to specifically check with the district or the county that is authorizing that charter, because it could be that in your charter petition you say our admins will have an admin credential, and so the credentialing rules for non-teaching assignments do vary a little bit for charter schools.
I know you touched on this, but just to clarify, an ELA 1 is okay for ELD, even if it's on a special ed credential. So special ed can teach general ed ELD courses?
Yeah, so I think we touched up on the special ed credential holders, as long as they have the ELA1 can do the ELD course.
Who can teach career readiness? I am not seeing it on the authorization table.
I think that's going to be talk to your monitoring authority, because you'll have to look at the job description, and really hone in on what is the content. I know it's career readiness, but I know there's codes for like skills and things like that. So you want to definitely talk to your monitoring authority, get that job description and kind of look to see what actually fits for that position, because it's all unique to everybody.
What is the quickest way to get a librarian certification? Also, did you answer the questions about ed specialists with old credentials that do not include autism? Oh, I don't know.
I didn't see that question about the autism, but librarian certifications, those are a little tricky. Local assignment options are very tricky for those. There's a lot of requirements that go into that. So I believe let me look this up really quick. So I'm not too well versed on librarian services.
They need to complete a program
Yeah.
to obtain the librarian certification, and you have to have a base
Mhm.
credential.
Yeah.
Correct. It didn't used to be that way. So you might have some librarian that are certificated without a base credential, but now it does require the base credential. And I know, I believe I was just at a conference, San Jose State has an online for librarian certification. But there is ways that you can contract with your local public library as long as there's a certified librarian there as well. So, I mean, there
Yeah.
are ways to get, or not around it, but there are ways to get that librarian in there.
Yeah.
And you can, our county here, some of them contract with the county, and then some of the districts contract with each other, with one of the bigger districts as well. Because remember, you don't have to have a librarian the whole year. You just need a school librarian to do certain things, like pick out instructional materials per year or whatever. But like, there are some things that can be done by a classified person in the library, like keeping the library open, checking out books, that kind of thing. But then there's still specific areas, and so they contract, one school librarian can do the job for multiple districts in 1 year.
And I think for the question in regards to autism, I think the previous question we had was about how to get somebody with an old credential that to get the autism authorization. It's you have to get the program in order to do that.
Right. Thank you. Just to clarify, if the teacher only has CLAD and does not have the ELA 1 credential, we should use the Ed Service Code 3 integrated ELD instruction only and not Ed Serve Code 4 designated and integrated instruction, but not primary language.
No, the
Yeah.
EL services that you have to select is what's happening in the course.
Mhm.
What is happening in the classroom? What kind of EL services are happening in the classroom? Not what credential the person has. Now, once the EL department checks that information is correct, then you can check credential requirements. But you don't want to ever try to fit what the teacher has, for reporting purposes, because then that would defeat the purpose of really making sure that you are providing services to your students.
I'm not sure I know who my CalPADS people are.
Sorry.
At a bigger district, you usually have like a data reporting division. At smaller districts, I think they just sometimes designate somebody that does multiple things, technology and CalPADS I've seen. So definitely ask around. If you're at a district, definitely inquire with who does all the data. So the way it goes is it starts with HR, like you enter in your data for whatever system you use, if it's Aries or et cetera. And then the school sites then enter their information onto those master lists and from their master list. And then that gets pulled by someone. So you want to figure out who that someone is getting that information. But like I said, typically it's your data department. If not, sometimes your technology department will have somebody in there.
We've had so many predetermined exceptions that were incorrect. How do they predetermine this? For example, core assignments that are not core.
So it goes back to the inputting. I think when Niza showed her table for the core assignments for middle school, of how you're entering them in, if it's a core or not a core. And then so the system does its best to then, mix all that information, and then that's when all those exceptions come up if they weren't coded correctly for those middle school assignments.
And usually those are listed in your student information system,
Mm-hmm.
those core assignments, and that's where that predetermination comes from.
And that's why you want to review your 4.3 reports, right? Because if you see a bunch of yeses on that report, those are all going to be predetermined exceptions and will bypass the district. So if they're not true core assignments, then you'd want to make sure that that column is marked as no.
Thank you so much for clarifying to an earlier question. What course code would properly correspond with an FFA photography engineering class, or should the student assistant just be rostered with the rest of the students?
Trying to think.
If it's for a student, if it's for the student assistant, I think there's only a gen ed code for it.
Mhm.
There's not one for CTE.
Yeah. So you'll just have to specify in your comments that it's a CTE assistant course.
Can we get the ed code that says the superintendent's credential can be revoked?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure you can do a quick Google review to check to look it up. Maybe it's on the I'm sure it's on the CTC's website.
What options do I have to assign an education specialist with mod severe authorization to serve mild mod population?
If they have not held a special education limited assignment permit, that would be my first off the bat. That's the only thing you can do. And just be mindful that only covers them for 1 year. And they have to work towards getting that mod severe authorization. So if you only need them for that 1 year, then they're fine. But if they're going to want to serve, continue to serve in that population, then they'll need to get the mild mod credential as well.
And the programs, the mild to mod and mod severe, they overlap quite a bit, right? So the trunk is essentially the same. So it's, yes, they have to complete a program, but it's not as lengthy as if they were just starting new. And so a lot of the people with the older credentials, like mild to mod, learning
Handicap.
yeah, who, the older credentials, I always recommend, see if you can add, the extensive support needs, because it gives you a full authorization. Not everybody wants to do that, and some just rather do the autism program alone, but it's sort of similar, maybe just a couple maybe 1 or 2 classes more, but again, people get scared when we say complete a program, but it's not a whole program.
For the bridge program, who do I reach out to again?
That would be your SELPA.
And there are some programs out there that are offering the service. I want to say San Diego County, LA County is offering the bridge, and there's a couple others out there for a fee are offering the bridge program.
HR folks at districts say that elementary schools do not use CALPADS. How will a dance class be created and or coded?
Everyone uses CalPads, I believe. That's the state reporting system, so it should be should be utilized. And then you should code your dance class appropriately to that code. I'm kind of surprised saying that they don't use it. Like I said,
use it because you use CalPads not just for this purpose. You use CalPads to report special ed students. You use CalPads to report foster students, lunch, those ones that get the lunch or free or reduced lunch. You definitely use CalPads.
Can math support be coded with the RTI/MTSS course code and be taught by a math credentialed teacher?
Is the class math support or is it RTI MTSS? Whatever it is, if it's math support, then you report it as math support, and if it's RTI or MTSS, then you report it with they're both support courses, right? Neither one of them requires a student roster, but you want to make sure that it aligns with what the class actually is. And a math credential would work for either one of these courses.
I have already received confirmation from CDE CalPADS that the 9236 course code can be taught by a CTE credentialed teacher. The exception is that it allows for multiple credential types. I just heard that is a no.
That's not what I'm aware of. You definitely contact your monitoring authority
Yeah.
on this one and then provide that guidance. Could it be that we are absolutely wrong and, you know, perhaps that everything is possible?
Yeah.
Reach out to your monitoring authority, or could it be that the CDE person either misunderstood the question or that's also possible. So definitely check with your monitoring authority on this one.
Can an intern credential teach any subject?
Well, when you're hiring an intern, they have to teach in the subject that they're going through in their program. They can't deviate out of that subject area. So if they're hired to teach math and they're doing their intern math credential, that's where they have to teach. They can't deviate. It doesn't work like a sub permit where you can go into another assignment. It's strictly for that assignment only.
We can use county of assignments, local assignment option, I'm sorry, committee on assignment, local assignment option to authorize a teacher with a multiple subject credential in an elementary art class, right?
It is an elective course. So I am gonna say yes.
I would say as long as they meet the standard requirements, and then always check with your monitoring authority, our favorite phrase.
Local assignments definitely, and committee on assignment specifically does call for approval prior to the beginning of the semester in which the course is supposed to start. So that's kind of a big one for that one.
Can an administrator of a deaf and hard of hearing school step down to a librarian with the administrative credential and an ed specialist in deaf and hard of hearing?
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
Is there a resource we can refer teachers to in order for them to find additional courses they may need to take for obtaining new credentials?
I'm definitely, the CTC does have a kind of search guide that you can filter to see what programs, what you're looking for specifically and what they're teaching. Sometimes I just tell certain teachers, we're like, I can't find, I'm like, well, Google search what you're looking for and make sure, you know, that's also California based if you're doing certain courses, and because you want to make sure that everything's transferable. But definitely the CTC does have a list of institutions that offer different courses, because not only is it, you know, universities and colleges, but, you know, also county offices of ed also offer programs as well. So definitely looking on the CTC website.
This has already been discussed, but may we have a bit more clarification regarding the requirement for credentialed librarians? Is the requirement one librarian for every 785 students? Will districts be held accountable for this immediately?
I've never heard 700, you know, that limit. Will the districts be held accountable for having a librarian immediately? Yes, that's a requirement, but I don't know where that 785 statement is coming from.
Added information, LACOE provides librarian services through an annual contract. Thank you, Hilda. If a journalism class is an elective, no English credits given, and is a college prep course, can we cite Title V, or do we need a single subject English credentialed teacher?
Journalism falls under English, so you're gonna need an English credential. Could it be an elective and sure, but you need an English credential.
Our middle school librarians do not have a credential. What I am hearing is that they will need to have one.
You need to have the district needs to have a librarian. So if they're not performing the duties of a teacher librarian, if they're not selecting the instructional material, then sure, can they be in the library checking out books? They're not sure, but the district needs to have.
I believe there was a library resource added into the chat as well, if anyone would like to reference that. For CalPADS course code 7000, Exploratory Career Technical Education, it says a single subject credential can work using Title V 4C, would a single subject credential in any CTE related area work, or does it depend?
It would be one of those 4 credentials,
Mm.
home ec, agriculture, business, ITE. And those 4 would cover this course because it is exploratory career technical. So it's covering all of the CTE like pathway. So it wouldn't concentrate in one area.
For someone who has a mod severe and needs to teach mild mod, can they complete the bridge for mod severe extensive support needs, which appears to have all of the same authorizations as the new mild to moderate? If they complete the bridge, can they teach mild mod even though they have the new mod severe credential?
No. The new credentials are based on the level of support of students. So is the student needing mild to mod support needs, or is the student needing the extensive support needs? True that the new credentials authorize basically the same thing, but it's the level of support that the student needs.
How do we know who our monitoring authority is?
It's typically your representatives at the County Office of Education, so it should be one of them. You'll also want to, if you're a charter, you kind of want to look at, you know, if you're under who your charter's under, because you're under school district. So just kind of going through those pathways. But yeah, typically it's your County Office of Ed.
What is response to intervention, RTI, and multi-tiered systems of support, MTSS? What credential authorizes those positions?
Multiple subject.
What does a multiple subject teacher, what will a multiple subject teacher need if they want to become a STEM teacher, teaching math, science, art? What single subject authorization will cover these subjects, and where can I find this information?
So STEM is a little different. And especially if you're looking like at the middle school level or junior high level, a multiple subject teacher could potentially do the STEM courses as long as they're going in that block schedule. Single subject, if you're looking, and it all depends, because you kind of have to look at what exact STEM course they're teaching as well. So it's not, like, I think someone mentioned it before, it's not what credential fits, it's you got to make sure everything's appropriately, but it's just not because you want this person and what can fit. You got to make sure they can teach that. So, and anybody else can jump in and help me if they want on that.
What drives the credential need is the primary content of the class, right? So if the primary content of this STEM class is math, then you need your math credential. If the primary content of the class is science, then you need a science credential. And your curriculum, that's why it's important that you communicate with your curriculum team, because they are the ones developing these courses, right? And so utilizing the different standards. So we don't know what is the primary content. They need to tell us in order for us to then determine what is the appropriate credential. Now CTC does have that guide, right? Where it tells you, 92201 should be covered by this. It's a guidance, right? So is it 100%, oh, this is the what must be? No, you work with your monitoring authority, always.
Okay, we're a little over time. Stephanie, can we continue?
If you guys want, we can answer these last 3 questions, or we can answer those at the next one. That's up to you guys.
I can finish up. We can finish up if you like. I'm okay.
Okay, we can finish these last 3 questions, and then after that, any other Q&As, you guys will have to refer to the next session.
So next question we did answer, but a quick refresh. Do charters require a librarian?
Moving forward, yes, they should. However, as Niza noted, you'd want to check with your charter and the verbiage that they used if you are going to be requiring a librarian as well. But yes, they should have one moving forward as of 2025.
Can you list the 4 CTE areas that work for CalPADS course code 7000 again?
7,000 is an exploratory of all of the CTE careers, all of them. But the single subject credentials that could cover that class are business, IT, home ec, and agriculture.
CalPADS reports don't distinguish between mild mod and mod severe classes, no, unless I'm missing something.
They don't, they're looking at the primary disability level of that student. So they're not going off of what the teacher has, they're going off what was reported that the student has in that teacher's classroom.
Great, thank you, everyone.
I believe we are all done for today. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Like I said, we have another one next week, same time, same place. I hope to see everyone there. Bye.
Thank you.